Welcome back to the Kelly Roach Show. I'm super excited to have our special guest here today, Sahil Bloom. And we're going to be talking about his new book coming out. And there's a lot to unpack. So I'm so excited to have you here today. Big welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled.
Yes, yes. So we're going to talk about the five types of wealth today. And before we get into kind of the context of the book and why you broke each of these five types of wealth out the way that you did, let's backtrack a little bit and let's give everyone the lead up on what really put it in your heart to want to create this body of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an important question, so I'm glad we're starting there. I tend to think that in the world of book writing, a lot of books get written because people feel like it's the next thing they should do. They feel like, okay, now it's time for me to write a book. I've done these other things, and now it's time for me to write a book. And that was very much not the case for me and for this book. I had been in the world of finance. I spent the first 7 years of my career working full time, 80, 90, 100 hours a week, head down, like very much on that traditional hard charging track. And I
Mm.
started writing really just as a hobby during COVID. Me, like many people, all of a sudden I had no social life and I was stuck at home most of the time and I wasn't commuting. And so instead of baking sourdough bread, like it seems like a lot of people picked up, I picked up writing. And originally that was on Twitter. I was writing these kind of little like breakdowns of different things that was happening in the world of finance or money. And then I expanded it to start writing in more depth about life and self-improvement, things that I've like always really thought about my entire life. And I started having a bunch of publishers approach me. This is like, in 2020, early 2021, asking me to write a book because it's the next thing that you do. You've built some sort of a platform, people are reading your work, following you. But I never had something that was calling me in that way. And in sort of early mid 2021, I had a personal experience that really changed my life and was the start of this journey to write this book. And that experience was a challenging one. And I think that like a lot of people, there's this sort of light that shines from the end or from the other side. Like when you experience some sort of trauma, some sort of tragedy, there's a wisdom that shines back onto your path. It's like the same thing as, the person who has the near-death experience and then has
Yep.
this new lease on life. And for me, it wasn't quite so crazy as a near-death experience. It was a realization on the finite and terrifyingly short amount of time that I had left with the people that I love most. So I was out for a drink one night with an old friend. At the time, my wife and I were living in California. I had been living there since going to college in 2009. That was 3,000 miles away from all of my family, from my parents, from my sister. And he asked me how I was doing. And I said it had started to get tough being so far away from my parents who were getting older and who I just didn't get to see enough. I'd grown up really close to them. And he asked how old they were. And I said mid 60s. And he said, how often do you see them? I said about once a year. And he just looked at me and said, okay, so you're going to see your parents 15 more times before they die. And I just remember feeling like I had been punched in the gut. The idea that the amount of time you have left with the people that you love most is so finite, so countable, that you can count it on a few hands, really just broke me. And the next morning, I woke up and I told my wife that I thought we needed to make a change. And within 45 days, we had sold our house in California. I had left my job and we had moved to the East Coast to be closer to our families and to really build a new life. And so I say that and I tell that story because that journey that started that day with that moment is the journey that led to this book. It was the journey for me to redefine what a wealthy life looked like to me, and to hopefully share some of those lessons with other people along the way.
No, that's so powerful. And I think, for a lot of us, I have a similar background, did the corporate thing, ran up that ladder, the whole thing. And it sometimes takes experiencing that to know that there's no amount of that that is going to, fulfill that internal desire and void for a rich and meaningful and fulfilling life. So, really glad that you decided to share that. And I'm sure your family is super happy that you had that moment also, right? And for your kids as well to get to spend time together
Yeah.
also. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on the kids point in particular, something that I haven't shared publicly. I write about it for the first time in the book. One of the struggles that my wife and I had experienced over the last year and a half, 2 years while we were in California, was we had been trying to conceive and unable to naturally. And at the time, I think it was a burden that she unfairly carried herself. And a part of that was I was not in the mental state or present enough to shoulder that burden with her. I was so busy chasing this definition of success, just making more and more money, thinking that I was going to wake up one day and that it was going to make me feel good, thinking that more external affirmation was going to fix the internal problems that I was experiencing. And the most beautiful thing in the world was we made that change. We moved across the country. And within 2 weeks of getting home, my wife got pregnant. And I just think about that today, like just this reminder that when your life comes into alignment, when your energy comes into alignment, everything falls into place as it should. And it's just been such a beautiful experience, allowing, my parents to grow up, alongside my son and see that new love developing. And it's just such an incredible thing.
That's so great. And that's such a God wink. That's
Exactly. A
such
God wink. I
divine
love that story. I love that
intercession in
phrase.
your life. Absolutely. I mean, you can't get more validation than you're on the right path than that, right?
I love
Yeah.
that phrase, God wink. I'm stealing that from you. I'll cite you.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay. So I love this. And I know this is speaking to so many people that are listening to this that are in this crazy juxtaposition of trying to find themselves amidst a world that everything that we are told will make us happy actually doesn't. And all of the things that our world devalues is actually what matters. And I think that's really what you're pointing out here with the book. So I'm excited to dig in a little bit more. So you talk about the 5 types of wealth. Let's just quickly touch on each of them.
hmm
And then I would love to just pick one and just unpack it a little bit further. And then we'll let people go and grab the book if they want to learn more. But let's talk about the 5 types of wealth and why you picked each of these 5 to really dig deep into in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So the five that are covered in the book, time wealth, social wealth, mental wealth, physical wealth, and then financial wealth. We can cover each one. What I do want to start with is the financial wealth point. And the reason I want to start there is to make an important point. The book does not argue that money doesn't matter, that you should give up all your worldly possessions and go live as a monk in the Himalayas. If you want to do that and you're called to that, then by all means do it. I won't be joining you. I like money just as much as other people do. The realization and the important point that I want to get across, especially in the financial wealth section, is that your relationship with money uh, is really grounded around your expectations. This idea that you need to understand your definition of enough. It can't be some mirage that's floating off in the distance, waiting to just disappear and reappear further out when you get there, because your expectations are ultimately your greatest financial liability. If your
Mm-hmm.
expectations continue to rise faster than your assets, you will never feel rich. And that's the reason we see so many rich yet miserable people. These people that think that their happiness, their contentment, their fulfillment is just at whatever the next financial milestone is. And ultimately, a lot of us have experienced that. We get the thing that we've wished for and prayed for, and then immediately start complaining about it. Like you get the car that you've been dreaming about, and then you see someone with a slightly nicer car, and you go like, "Oh man, this one's not quite good enough. I got to get the next layer, the next level." And C.S. Lewis, the author, talks about it as the inner ring, this idea that there's always another ring. And whenever you get to the next layer, there's another one. And if you keep going, you'll end up with nothing left.
Yeah.
And that life is what we're trying to avoid. It's this realization that above a certain level, which is much lower than you think, more money is not driving incremental happiness. It's these other areas. It's time, it's the social wealth, it's mental wealth, it's physical wealth. So I want to say that up front because I don't want people to think that it's just saying, oh, money doesn't matter, go off and do these other things, because clearly it has a role in our lives and in our ability to experience a healthy and wealthy life, but it's much lower on the totem pole than you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because so many studies have been done that, once you get over a certain level of wealth anyway, and I love money also. So, I'm with you, but once you get over a certain level, it really doesn't have any
Yep.
true impact on your happiness. And I think that's why you have to dig deeper in your growth as a person to understand why you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish and what you're willing to sacrifice in exchange for that. Because at a certain point, that more of the same is not actually what is going to make the biggest difference for you. And I think it's finding that balance between contentment and gratitude while you're still striving to grow and expand and elevate as a person, but not in a one-dimensional way. And I think that's when people really run themselves into a wall, when it's like the pursuit of that at the sacrifice of everything else. And then your life just kind of goes down the drain.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
It's also this realization that you make more money when your drive for it is actually grounded in something else. So the
Yes.
people that make the most
Yes.
money, it's generally because they
Yes.
are grounded in their purpose, or they're
Yeah.
grounded in this
100%.
feeling, this drive for growth, this drive for progress, that they want to keep getting better at the game. Those are the people that end up making a lot of money. It's not their search for money, it's the search for something else that's leading to that. And so
For
that's the
sure.
other call is, I know you do this in your coaching professionally. It's like ground people in their purpose,
Yeah.
and then they unlock those new levels of their financial wealth. So
For
it's a
sure.
very, very important point that you made.
Yeah.
So maybe just hitting on some of the others. Time wealth is the first section of the book, and so important. This idea of time wealth being who you spend your time with, how you spend it, where you spend it, what you trade it for. The idea that your time is so finite, so impermanent. That concept of the number of moments that you have left with your loved ones, understanding that impermanence and taking actions to take control of your time, to actually have the ability to allocate it according to your values and goals. We live in this world, and particularly in corporate culture, where saying I'm busy has become like this status flex. Like saying anything other than I'm busy makes it seem like you're lazy. And the reality is, busy is the opposite of what we want to be. We want to be anti-busy. We want to be in a world where we can sit back and freely allocate our time toward the things that we know are going to drive the incredible outsized outcomes in our life. And
Hmm.
so understanding that, zooming out and thinking about the core principles that allow us to do that, to unlock that, that is where time wealth is really centered.
I love that you unpack that in the book because I think that is the unspoken battle of our time. Like, I think the average person feels a constant sense of distraction, overwhelm. They feel burnout because they're doing so much that isn't really aligned with purpose. And I think that for a lot of people, they feel those feelings but don't necessarily take the time to deeply reflect on why they feel that way and what changes they need to make in their life in order to start regaining a sense of purpose and control and direction with their time, answering exactly those questions that you just mentioned, like what are you willing to trade your time for,
Mhm.
right? What is the intent? So I love that you unpack that in the book. And is there anything specific that you would want to mention here that's like an exercise that you recommend people do or a question that they ask themselves to kind of start thinking about this? I think it's a great time, given the time of year that it is, to get
Mhm.
people thinking a little bit in this direction.
Yeah. So at the end of each section of the book, I have these guides that actually break down specific science-backed tactics for building this type of wealth in your life. In the time wealth guide, there's a few that I think are really relevant for exactly this. And the important point with time wealth is that It's a combination of awareness, that is recognizing that time is your most precious asset, understanding the amount of time you have left, that it's much less than you think,
Mhm.
and then attention, meaning your ability to focus and concentrate your attention into the things that really matter and ignore the rest. That is something that most people are so bad at, including myself, in my prior world. You say yes to everything. You say
Yeah.
yes to every single commitment that comes your way, every single new meeting, every single new thing. What you end up
Yeah.
doing is you end up running on a treadmill. You're right. You're like on a little
Yeah.
hamster wheel, faster and faster, but you're not making any progress. It's like a rocking horse. You're just kind of going
Yeah.
back and forth, and you feel like you're moving a lot. So it looks good, right? Your boss is like, oh, the person is moving a lot, but there's no progress being
Yeah.
made. And so
Yeah.
the first exercise I really love people to do is what I call my energy calendar. And this was the first thing I did when I was trying to remap my life. I went for 1 week, and at the end of every single day, I just color coded the items on my calendar according to whether they were energy creating. I marked them green, meaning I felt energized after doing them. Neutral, marked them yellow, meaning I just felt normal. And energy draining, I marked them red, meaning they drained me of my energy. At the end of the week, if you do that every single day, you have a very clear sense of the trends, of the types of activities that are creating a lot of energy in your life, the types of people that are creating a lot of energy in your life, and the types of things that are draining a lot of that energy. If you can make tiny tweaks to that over a period of a few months, and you can lead to a calendar that looks more green than red, it's never going to be entirely green, but
Yeah.
more green than red, you feel dramatically different at the end of your weeks because you're deploying your precious energy, your precious attention, your
Yeah.
precious time into the things that really matter, into the things that are lifting you up. And generally speaking, when things are lifting you up, when they're energizing, that is where you are going to find your best results, your best outputs, the things that are going to drive that 100,000, 10,000x output in your life.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful. And it's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I've been working with one of my programs on time mastery recently, and it really became clear to me that there's so many things that aren't taught in school. There's so many things that are not culturally made to be important or a focal point from a skill standpoint, but learning how to master your time is one of the most valuable, important, meaningful, and value driven things that you can possibly do in your life. And almost no one that you come across has mastery of their time. The people who are living a true 1% life, a wealthy life, they do, right? Because they're so deeply intentional, they're so ruthless about it. But it sounds like you give some really good exercises in the book that can help people to really start moving down this path, which I love. I love.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that idea that you're hitting on of reaching that state of time mastery, it's a funny thing with all of these different areas. One of the reasons, at least my perception, one of the reasons that people don't start or don't make progress is because the end state feels so intimidatingly far from where you are. So
Mhm.
if I'm working and I'm just nonstop busy, and I can't imagine a world where it's any different, and I can't I'm on calls all day, I'm on Zoom meetings, and it's just
Yeah.
like I'm just busy. I have kids, and I can't possibly imagine a world where I have total control
Yeah.
over my time. And so
Yeah.
as a result, I think I might as well not do anything.
Anything. Yeah.
And the reality is, tiny little changes, little problems that you can solve that leave you slightly better off tomorrow is
Yeah.
better than nothing. And it
For sure.
builds momentum to get to that end state. Like you don't just build a wall, you lay one brick today. And for
Yeah.
most people, there are tiny changes you can make. I mean, in my life, one of the
Yeah.
first changes I made was I find Zoom meetings and phone calls extremely draining. Not this. This is a Zoom discussion conversation. This is very different. But like a normal Zoom meeting
Yeah.
or a phone call, I would rather like staple gun my stomach than sit on a
Mhm.
full day of Zoom meetings. But what I found was that while those were really energy draining, going for a walk and doing that exact same phone call was energy creating. I love being
Yeah.
on walks. I'm much more
Yeah.
present. I feel much more open. And so I switched a bunch of my phone calls to being out on a walk and doing those calls.
Mhm.
Suddenly, your week looks and feels a whole lot better. And so it's an example to just say that a tiny little change, a tiny little intervention can actually create a huge impact. You just have to open your mind up a little bit to be creative and to think about what are those small steps I can take today to create that dramatic change.
No, it's so true. And I completely agree with you. I think there's a lot of like, I'm not even going to look at that because I'm so busy and I have so much on my plate that there's nothing I can do anyway. Like that, I think is what happens. And to your point, there's always things that
Mm.
anyone can do that can make the experience of what they're doing be better or feel different or go from, like you said, that was a perfect example, go from energy depleting, energy draining to energy giving. And it's taking the time to really ask yourself, what are those things? So I think that exercise that you gave about identifying those things is, it's so spot on. And I think particularly business owners, who are the people listening to this show, they have the autonomy to make those decisions. They're not working for a corporation. They have the autonomy to say, I'm going to go for a walk while I do these calls instead of, sitting in the office, for sure. So let's just quickly touch on like maybe one of the other ones, and then
Mhm.
we'll invite people to go get the book so that they can really unpack this for themselves and go into the new year ready to crush it.
Absolutely. Um, let's talk about social wealth. So this is your connection to the world around you, the people, the depth of connection to your few, and the breadth of your connection to a broader circle of network, community, something bigger than yourself, whether it's spiritual or whether it's local, regional, national, whatever it might be, something bigger than the self. Social wealth is a really interesting thing because we live in a world where we've been focused on, our health in all of these different ways, and yet we've ignored our social health in so many ways. Loneliness has become the real pandemic, and it's particularly acute for younger people who have grown up in the social media age.
Yeah.
I saw a stat recently that 70% teenagers are spending 70% less time with their friends in person than they were 2 decades ago. And I can't imagine something scarier than that fact that we have lost
Yeah.
ourselves in these screens and we've lost our ability to connect face to
Yeah.
face with other people and with other humans. And we know scientifically that it is essential to living a
Yeah.
healthy, happy life. The
Yeah.
Harvard study of adult development found if over an 80-year time span, they studied 1,300 people, they found that the single greatest predictor of your health, your physical health at age 80, was your relationship satisfaction at age 50. So, how you felt about
Mhm.
your relationships was more impactful than your cholesterol, than your blood pressure, than all of these other health metrics. And so, focusing on that, recognizing that the things that you do, the investments you make in your relationships, in the people, compound just as well as any financial investment you can make.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, and it's so interesting, and I'm so happy that you talk about this in the book because this is a new phenomenon. I mean, we have to completely recalibrate how we think about this part of our lives because everything around us is moving more and more. I mean, from driverless cars to, our phones and the social media, and then they want the goggles and the glasses. It's like you have to be so intentional about not going down that rabbit hole with your life. And we don't know the long-term effects of that, although I think we can guess. Um, we don't have an example of the long-term effects of that yet because we're literally living through it as we speak. But I think it's so, so crucial. And I mean, it's, obviously for our children, it's something that we have to be super hyper aware of and focused on every single day, but for ourselves as well. So I think it's
Completely
really
agree.
powerful that you unpack that for sure. So let's just take it up high level, 50,000 foot view for everybody that's listening today. What do you think is the most important reason for them to go get this book and read this book to start off their new year in the right way?
Well, look, a lot of the entire world is trying to tell you all of the answers for your life and telling you the right way to live and telling you the right way to eat or telling you the right way to make money. All of these things, they're feeding you
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the exact opposite here. I
Mhm.
do not have the answers for your life.
Mhm.
What I can do is give you the right questions. And that is what this book is all about. It's helping you ask the right questions so that you can
Yeah.
come to the right answers for your life, so that
Yeah.
you can define your true priorities, so that you can measure the things that matter and then design your life around those things that you really care about. That is what this book is all about. It is going to be an emotional gut punch at different times. It weaves together storytelling, history, these tactics. I'm thrilled with how it turned out. I know it is going to have an impact on you, and I just can't wait to share it with the world.
Oh, I'm so excited for you and for the book. And I can't wait to dig into my copy. Thank you
Amazing.
so, so much. And where can people go to get their copy of The Five Types of Wealth?
It is available now anywhere books are sold. You can find more information at the5typesofwealth.com and go to your favorite local bookstore or Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, anywhere that books are sold.
I love it. Okay, everyone listening, go grab your copy today. Make sure you share this episode with someone that wants to create a breakthrough in their life. I think the most powerful thing that you shared today was in that final moment where you said you're asking the questions for people to come up with the right answers for their own lives because it's not one size fits all. And we know that the degree to which we ask better questions, we're going to get better answers. And that's the thing that's really going to change our life. So thanks for taking the time to do the research and the work and putting the heart into creating this book. And I know it's going to change so many lives. And I loved having you on the show today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for coming on. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Kelly Roach Show. As you know, sharing is caring. And the best thing that you can do to support the show is to share this episode with someone that you know it will make a difference for. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.